Welcome to the Momentum Ministry Partners podcast. This podcast is designed to provide momentum in our God-given roles of leadership as we partner together to equip today's Christian leaders for tomorrow's opportunities. Whether you're a pastor, youth leader, ministry volunteer, parent, or student, we want to be your go-to and most trusted resource for equipping and encouragement when it comes to your ministry and leadership influence. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope you enjoy this episode.
Hello and welcome back for Season 3 of the Momentum Ministry Partners podcast. My name's Eric Miller and I'm the host. I have with me today Jeff Bogue.
Jeff Bogue's in the house.
Jeff, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm excited for Season 3. You probably can't hear it in my voice, but I am. I'm fighting a cold. And
the thing with you, Eric, is you're excited about everything all the time. You're the most optimistic person I know.
I love it. What was that song? You played a song for me one time. You said this is your theme song.
Everything is awesome.
Oh, there it is. Yeah. Oh, that's so funny. That's probably accurate.
Yeah.
I could see that.
It's a good thing.
I'll own it.
It's a good thing.
I'll own it.
You're a good teammate because you counterbalance me.
There you go.
Where I'm like, everything's probably falling apart right now.
Yeah, Jeff, how's it going today? Fine. Are you in a good mood? Yes. Can't you tell? No.
Here's our list of problems.
Yeah. I like it. All right. Well, we're starting Season 3. I thought it would be fun because you and I kind of started this.
Yeah.
So let's take the listeners down memory lane for a minute here.
Memory lane.
It's been kind of cool to see our analytics, our statistics. So thank you, as always, to our listeners who have been rating, reviewing the podcast, that have been sharing episodes that are meaningful to you. And we love when you do that. It actually does help. I always kind of teased people that do podcasts that you always hear them say that. And they're like, it helps other people find out about it. It actually does.
Yeah, that's right.
I didn't realize that, but it actually does. So
See, now I'm so old that you used to pass the cassette tape around.
Yeah.
Yeah, you listen to John Maxwell or whoever, and you'd be like, you got to listen to this. I'll dub it for you.
Yeah, this is a good tape. And then you give them a pencil, too, for when the cassette tape
when it hung up in your car.
So many people have no idea what we're talking about right now. That's okay. They missed out on that.
That's right.
Well, Jeff, when it's fun to think about our heartbeats as pastors, as leaders, is to provide resources that will help keep people healthy, that'll help engage in a topic or a conversation that maybe you're not always thinking about as you're leading your church or your ministry. But for this episode, we kind of just wanted to re-engage our audience. We wanted to kind of even redefine the purpose of our podcast and why we're here. We've picked up a lot of new listeners over the last season or two, and so we're grateful for those of you who are here. We want to remind you that, first of all, we're here for you.
Yep.
So if you have questions, most of our topics are listener driven. And so, the pastors that we network with, the people that we're helping, coach or provide resources for, send us those questions. As always, we love, wanting to figure out if we can't be that resource, we'll go find it. We'll find somebody who can, and we'll bring them on, and we'll interview and kind of dive deep into those topics. So, Jeff, from your perspective, from your seat as president of Momentum, why did we start this? Let's kind of take them down memory lane and how this all started and came about.
Well, the reason that I got involved with Momentum in the first place. So my day job is pastoring a church, Grace Church of Greater Akron. And that takes a lot of time and a lot of energy and leading our staff and our 8 campuses and investing that way. But when the invitation came to take leadership over Momentum Ministry Partners, what really made me passionate about doing that was the desperate need to raise up full-time Christian workers and passionate marketplace leaders. There is a absolute leadership crisis within the church. Only 25% of pastors in North America are under the age of 40. about 85% of all Christian workers in North America are due to retire in the next 6 years. And we have a generational crisis. There's just really no other way for it to talk about it. And this was first kind of made known to me probably 4 or 5 years ago when I was talking, when the board of Momentum was talking to me about taking it over. And back then it was 85% will retire in the next 10 years. And it's almost 5 years later. And I'm like, that crisis is still there. In fact, I would say it's amplified because COVID happened in the middle of all that. And so I took over leadership of Momentum just purely out of a kingdom mindset that for my church and then for churches around the country and even the world, if groups of people don't get passionate about raising up, training up, and commissioning leaders, then the kingdom of God as we know it is going to morph and change dramatically. Now, there's parts of that are positive, right? There's church, the capital C church becomes bloated, it becomes distracted, all those kind of things. But then there's parts of that are very negative. That church of 150 people that's full of people that love Jesus and actually does make a level of impact in their community isn't going to have a youth pastor or a senior pastor. Yep. And there's, there may be 1 or 2 mega churches in a given community. There's 40 of those small churches. And so you cannot pull that stuff out of the fabric of a culture and not have the culture shift dramatically. And then when you look at the challenges that are generational challenges, generational questions, you have to view those as generational opportunities. And so that's why I got involved, and that's what I'm passionate about. I think what's unique about Momentum, maybe because a full-time senior pastor is the president in some ways, and like Eric, 17 years of youth pastoring, because pastors are leading this, is I think Momentum is kind of proudly a parachurch ministry. Like we look and say, no, we actually cherish our role of serving the local church. And we realize that some of the things that need done and some of the methods that can be used, it's impossible, or it would be distracting for a local church to pull that off on their own. And so when Eric says, like you said a little bit earlier, we really do listen to the church and really do try to meet those needs. That is our everyday world. I get probably 5 to 10 emails a month of parachurch ministries who want me to buy their product, want me to participate in their program. And like every other pastor out there, I just delete or try to catch those in my spam folder anyways. Yeah. Momentum, we were just talking about this morning. We gather the pastors to say, what do you need? How can we serve you? And then we actually cherish and relish that role of serving them. So we're not really promoters of self. We don't have these big products that we sell. What we are is people who are trying to amplify and accelerate the kingdom, and in specifically the leadership development in the marketplace and in the ministry, so that those young people can go back and lead in your church, pastor your church, not so they can be sucked up into our organization in some way. So I get pretty passionate pretty quick. You can tell about all that. But that's really what drives us and motivates us.
I love it because in a lot of ways, for both of us, we've said it kind of feels like coming home to run the family business. We grew up in these programs. We cut our ministry teeth in some of these things. And yet now getting to serve, like that really is our heartbeat and our mindset, to serve the local church. Like that's God's plan. That's his design. And so while we are a parachurch organization, we really want to love and serve the local church. So it's fun to get to do that. It's fun to get to leverage everything that we have to help make maximum impact for you and your local church.
Yeah, and I think there's, when I scroll through Instagram or TikTok, I see lots and lots of critiques, sometimes criticisms, but lots of critiques of the local church. I think almost every pastor I know is very aware of the problems and the shortcomings and the front. I don't feel like you need an outside organization telling you what else is wrong with you or how else you're behind the times.
Right.
Momentum is different, where we're not critiquing, we're looking and saying, how can we help?
Yeah.
We know too, we were joking about you being an optimist, and I don't think I'm a pessimist. I think I'm a realist, but I don't come as a pastor. I don't come into my office, so to say, every day and somehow unaware of the weaknesses and the shortcomings of my church, all the way down to like individuals that are struggling with pain or sin, etc. I am hyper aware. It keeps me up at night. It's all I ever think about. It's hard for me sometimes to be positive because I see the overwhelm. Like I have to make myself share testimony of what God's actually doing, because God's going to do these incredible things, and I'm always going to look at the one person who needed to respond that didn't. I think most pastors are like that because we're passionate about people, passionate about the kingdom of God. So Momentum does not come and do that. We're not church consultants. We don't come in and say, well, here's the 5 things that are wrong. Get your act together. We are trying to be partners where a ministry leader would look at us and say, here's what I know is wrong. I don't have the bandwidth or the ability to tackle that. And we will look and say, if we can we help own that for you and maybe create some things that would help you be a part of it so that it breeds and brings that life back to you, not to us. In my view, if Momentum does its job correctly, the local pastor gets all the credit for it. Yeah. People don't even really know that we're out there, kind of a thing. Yeah. And so I'm just passionate about that. And I think, you said that we kind of grew up in this. That was, in many ways, like the former president, Ed Lewis, and one of the former directors, Tim Kurtanik, that was very much their heartbeat. They did things differently than we do things, obviously, but that was their heartbeat, and that's what we grew up in. We're like, man, this actually helped. Yeah. But it helped us be pastors. Yeah. And it helped us accelerate our youth ministries in our churches. That's the stuff that we're passionate about as a ministry and what we give our life to. Now, what we'll say in a nutshell is 3,000 pastors, 10,000 passionate marketplace leaders in the next, or missional marketplace leaders in the next 20 years is our big goal. But we're really looking and saying, how do we help a local church or local pastor create pastors and create missional marketplace leaders as we go forward?
It's fun because we kind of are trying to position ourselves to play to our strengths. We don't view ourselves as the experts in any of this. We're not saying like we've cornered the market on how to do church. Like we're not selling you ministry in a box. Really what we want to do, like you're one of the most strategic thinkers that I know. You are a phenomenal team builder and you develop leaders. And so like I'm that like weird, like I love networking and connecting people. And so that like my high relational gifts of like I want to listen and learn from you. And I'm probably not the person that's going to have the answer, but I know someone who is.
Yeah, that's right.
And so to be able to connect those things, and that is a huge part of why we started this podcast even, of like, well, how do you get some of those conversations together with different people that have the answers that people are asking those questions? We're like, well, then let's start a podcast. I know we started it during COVID when everybody and their brother was starting a podcast. Yeah. But that's really the heartbeat.
But I think there's a layer of, that is the heartbeat, and there's a layer of it. Like as a listener, you don't have any trouble getting Craig Crochel's feedback or Andy Stanley or whoever, your guy is. Those things are easy to find. They're a podcast search away. I think we're trying to get leaders and guys, men and women in front of you who are on the ground And I don't mean I listen to Craig and others, like Carrie Newhoff, those guys, like I listen to those things too. But if you're a youth group of 40 kids, hearing from a youth pastor of 100 kids is the most valuable thing. Now, that guy isn't going to be on Carrie Newhoff. Right. If you're a pastor of 300 people, hearing from a pastor of 500 people, or maybe even, you may even be 1,000, 1,500, but the guy with the church of 2,000 or 2,500, he's not going to be on Carrie Newhoff.
Right.
Now, please don't hear me diminish. You guys all should listen to those podcasts. They're very, very helpful. But we're trying to get that on the ground work done and bring those guys in front of you guys and bring those thoughts in front of you so that you can actually grab an idea and like implement it that night. And that's a huge thing. Yeah. So what I say a lot is Jesus is coming back. People are going to hell. Let's go. There's work to be done. And me going and studying agriculture at Ohio State is important. It's also important that I know how to fix my old tractor and make it run today.
Right.
And I think because I'm a pastor and you're a pastor, we're like, that's how do you reach Generation Alpha isn't wildly important. How in the world do I get a discipleship group going with high school kids who don't want to come to it is actually what I'm dealing with today.
Yep.
And so that's just the uniquenesses of who we are.
Yeah. So Jeff, for our newer listeners then, for people who maybe are just joining us, they've been sent, a podcast episode or two and they're checking out, they're starting in on season 3. What's a win for our organization? If you're new to us, if you're checking this out maybe for the first time, you're doing a great job of describing what we're most passionate about, but what would a win be for us?
A win for us is for us to know you and you to know us and us to trust each other. I use the illustration a lot of we all have Legos. We all have pieces of things that are valuable, and the most dynamic and efficient and catalytic way to do leadership development is for people who trust each other to put all their Legos on the table and see what we can build.
Yeah.
So that's a win for me. And so we have a youth conference. That's a Lego. And that Lego could be really beneficial for you. You might have an idea or a teaching series, and you put those Legos out, and we'll take those and put those up like on the Momentum Pro website, because that volunteer youth pastor, if he can just use your stuff that Wednesday because he had to work late, see, it just accelerates it. We have urban centers and travel teams. Those are Legos where you might look and say, I don't have the time to put another mission trip together. Can I just show up at your guys' stuff? We're like, yep, you can. Well, we might look at you and say, you're actually a phenomenal equipper and trainer of people. Would you be willing to lead parts of this?
Yep.
We don't have a staff that just goes, we're like, we would lean into pastors and stuff like that. So to me, that's the big win is when we start thinking as a unit. Sometimes we have things that you need. Sometimes you have things that we need. It all winds up being mutually beneficial, and it accelerates the kingdom forward. If I read the book right, and I'm pretty sure that I do, if we do ministry right, parachurch ministry, youth ministry, adult ministry, if we do it right, we drift away into memory and then oblivion, and Jesus is the only one who's actually known.
Yep.
So that is a heartbeat of my church. That's a heartbeat of Momentum. We're not trying to build a brand and make a name for ourselves. We're trying to get the job done. And a win for me is when we can relationally team up with other people who have that same mindset. If you're looking to be this massive celebrity who sells all your product, I can tell you right now, you'll probably never be on the stage of my youth conference. But if you're an effective pastor who loves people, who can communicate, who has a passion for the lost, I don't care if you're known on a global scale or not.
Yeah.
Like, we need to hear and know from you.
Yeah.
And that community, I think, is a really, really important community. And I think that mindset is a mindset that makes the most sense to young people today, especially in a post-COVID world. Yeah. So even this podcast, like, I'm really grateful that more people listen to it. The goal of this podcast is not to blow up a podcast. Right. It's like, if this is helpful, or even you guys listening know that you have an invitation to come to the Lego party, I'm like, yeah, that's the point of it, you know, yeah, and we'll go from there.
Well, and that's exactly like why my job is so fun, where I get to, like, you know, forgive me all the youth pastors and pastors that I'm like dropping into your church on a Sunday morning or showing up at your youth group or trying to get a Zoom call with you. But like, I want to learn what are your wins? What are the things that God's doing in your ministry, and what are the obstacles that you're trying to figure out? And how, if I can be a resource or put wind in your sail in any way, I'm in. Like, I want to be able to do that. And it may not always be Momentum Urban Centers or our youth conference is the answer, but I've done this a ton of times, which in some senses makes me terrible salesman. But I'm like, if it's this other thing that's going to help you, well, then if I don't tell you that, shame on me. Like,
yeah, we'll resource you outside of our own ecosystem, and I think everybody who's a grown up knows that things cost money, and you have to raise support, and you got to charge for youth conference and all those kind of things. That's different than I want to be a celebrity and I want to build my own brand. Right. I want to be a TikTok influencer. It's just different. Yeah. And I want to be an influencer for Christ. I don't really care if you associate that with Jeff or even Momentum. I care more that we trust each other. Yeah. And I want that influence to grow. So like, if you're in ministry, or even if you're not, like, you sharing with your other friend that you trust Momentum Youth Conference or you trust Travel, that is more important to me than, like, did you hear this guy speak? Right. He was so hilarious. And I'm like, we'll be hilarious. It's like we're still ministering to kids, things have to make sense. But in my view, we have to have a generation of pastoral and marketplace leaders who say, we've got to get kingdom work done. And the competitiveness, the jealousy, the arrogance, people going to hell and Jesus coming back, like, for real. Yep. And it has to be set aside. Yep. We have to be missionaries to our own culture instead of trying to carve out a market share. And I'm like, I use this example in church a lot. You're a baseball fan. Mm-hmm. So, go Cubs. You're a huge Cubs fan. Who is the Cubs' biggest rivalry?
St. Louis Cardinals.
Okay.
I've trained my kids to say stinking Cardinals.
Okay. So I'm gonna play a joke on you here. Uh-oh. Right? So who's the Cubs' biggest rivalry?
The St. Louis Cardinals.
You're wrong.
Ooh.
Who's their biggest rivalry?
The NFL.
The NFL. You've heard me do this
I
before.
know where you're going.
Yeah. So it's not the St. Louis Cardinals. It's the National Football League.
Right.
Who is putting baseball out of business?
Yeah, NFL.
The NFL. And I feel like in the church world, when we look and say, I'm this church, I'm that church, I have an opinion, you have an opinion, when we're fighting for market share of a dying market.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, the problem is the NFL. And even now, I would say actually the problem is probably YouTube. Mm-hmm. NFL is kind of an old illustration. The problem is that no kid is going to sit down and watch a 3-hour anything.
Yeah.
Right? I think as pastors, Momentum Ministry Partners is trying to be a part of building a network of pastors who realize my challenge is not the guy across the street. My challenge is YouTube or the NFL.
Right.
We here in Akron, we just had a church buy a building right next door to one of our churches. And I had somebody ask me the other day, they're like, what do you think about that? And I'm like, well, I said, I don't agree with them theologically, but I don't think they're causing people to go to hell, so I hope they succeed. They're like, really? I'm like, what are we talking about?
Right.
That I have a big church. I don't even have 5% of Akron coming to my church.
Yep.
My problem is not another church that's next door to me. My problem is a world that doesn't know Jesus or care about him.
Yep.
So to me, those are the kind of things that like drive me, motivate me, and like drive these organizations. And I love building relationships with people who are like that. The guy who is the author and the Generation Alpha expert, he needs to make a living.
Yep.
So I'll buy his book and pay his honorarium. I got no problem with that at all. I don't mean it that way at all. Mm-hmm. But the guy who's trying to put the other guy out of business so he can be a bigger celebrity in the name of Jesus, I'm like, I'm really not interested in anything that you're doing, because that we're just not going to think that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if you want to dive deeper into some of this, if you haven't checked out our website, buildmomentum.org, that's a great place to go. You're obviously listening to the podcast, so I'd say go back to season 1 and the first, 5-6 episodes that
just
Jeff
binge
did. They're still key foundational episodes.
Yeah.
Like understanding absolute truths, your identity in Christ, loving the LGBTQ, like we talked about suicide, social media, some of the things that are those like the enemies to the church, and the things that you as a ministry leader, a parent
are dealing with every day.
That's your Tuesday.
Yep.
That's regular, like day in, day out. That's why we're here. We want to be a resource for you in those areas. So yeah, Jeff, thank you for sharing some of that. Let's recap just the summer. We're starting off, we're in end of August here. We had a great summer. It was funny when we both started, it was 2020, so COVID, and we kept saying we just need to have a good summer.
It took us 3 years to get to a good summer.
We had a good summer, Jeff. We had a really good summer.
We did have a great summer.
Let's just recap briefly a little bit about that. We had Momentum Youth Conference. It was awesome. Like, share some of the wins, the highlights from that, urban centers, travel teams.
Yeah, to me, I'd almost... I'll just start with what you said last. Travel teams, those are teams in which kids come under kind of the Momentum umbrella for about 3 weeks. We disciple them, we train them, and then they do hands-on ministry. And the big wins is young people doing ministry, getting a vision for ministry, and then we work really, really hard to say, now let's dream about how to do that ministry in your church when you go home.
Yep.
And seeing those switches come on in a young person's mind, and that sometimes those kids are going to be like, they should be on American Idol, and they should be the next Billy Graham. Sometimes they're the kid that is like, you know what, I really could volunteer at the soundboard, or I really do love working with kids, or I really am going to start a Bible study at my school. So this is not how to make a superstar. It's not a sports camp where, the next round of Major League Baseball players are going to.
Yeah. This
is a discipleship program, and we see it work, and we see it work in great ways. So those are big wins. Mm-hmm. I think the ultimate win of that is when they go home and lead or serve in a powerful way in their local church.
Yeah.
So that's that. Urban centers, huge. We have those in Philadelphia and in Los Angeles. And the same thing, you've got people sharing their faith for the first time, people who often are exposed to poverty and drug abuse and mental illness. And I mean, it is, we spend the day in the ghettos of the world, like the places that are on the national news. Like we're going to go in there. And so that's a powerful thing. Sometimes we partner with organizations like the Dream Center out in Los Angeles or some of the ministries on Skid Row. Sometimes, like in Philly, we partner a lot with churches that are in the city.
Yep.
And we're able to come and do Bible camps for them or bring, do some kind of ministry that's encouraging for them, helps them to break into the neighborhood. Yeah. And those are incredible things. I think the big one for me there is kids and adults getting a heart for the brokenness of the world, them practicing sharing their faith.
Yep.
It's much easier to share your faith with a stranger than it is a friend. Most believers never share the gospel, and so it's a little bit of a practice field for them. And then the same thing, them having a heart when they come home to be a part of that. And I just love to watch that shift. Once you know someone and love them, you're no longer afraid of where they live.
Yeah.
And so watching the urban environment and the roughest parts of the urban environment not be terrifying. Now, you got to have some street smarts. I'm not saying that.
For sure.
But that's different than it being terrifying.
Yeah.
And because you love someone there.
Yep.
And you're like, I'm thinking about you now. I'm not thinking about whatever the social media narrative is about the neighborhood that you live in. So those are huge.
It's fun. It's fun watching that light switch go on for those students, both with travel teams and with the urban centers. Seeing students have those like deep discipleship opportunities, the like get out of your comfort zone. There's something unique and special about like leaving your own church and your own community for a little while to go do those practice field opportunities. But when the light switch goes on and then watching the students go back home, we love partnership, we love follow-up, we love feedback. And in that process, like we're hearing these stories come in over the last weeks and months of students who like, they're like, I get it now. And the transferable process of like, I got out of my comfort zone in Philadelphia this summer. I prayed with somebody out loud for the first time ever. And now they're like, I'm sitting next to a friend in my science class, and I actually have the tools, the courage, and the confidence to be able to ask them how I can pray for them. I'm like, that stuff gives me goosebumps. I like love that.
It's huge.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. And God, getting to that's something like that's hard for an everyday pastor to pull off. It's wildly beneficial when that pastor or youth leader can get in the van. We pull off the logistics, and you're just there cheering for your kids and helping them figure that out. We're not the way that we function as a ministry, we're not like a summer camp where you drop your kids off and we do the counseling. We facilitate things so that you are very much in the thick of it. And it is the funnest part of pastoring in those ways.
For sure.
When I think about the youth conference, so much happens there. I think the biggest win for me is, the kids who accept Christ. A couple hundred of them accepted Christ. And then really what we do at youth conference is we try to challenge them spiritually, call them to a focus. And then in addition to that, we really try to cast a vision. One of the things that I think we recognize and identified relatively quickly is that kids don't have vision in their life. They have problems and they have expectations.
Right.
So they're struggling with their mental health, with anxiety, depression. They have expectations. You need to make the team. You need to go to practice. You need to get a better grade. What are you going to do in your future? They don't have vision. Like what do you dream about? How has God created you? What could God do through you? What do you want to do for God in your life? And so that's my one of my favorite parts of Momentum is we'll cast that vision for kids to go into full-time ministry. That vision's cast almost nowhere in their life. And then we'll cast that vision when it comes to being missional marketplace leaders. Like, let's think of your career in light of your calling instead of in light of your finances, or even simply your happiness. And I saw hundreds of those switches clicked on for kids. And they're kids, so that you've got, if we give an invitation, we gave an invitation, several of them, but on the last night, we probably had 1,400 kids respond to an invitation. We're very aware that some of those kids are like, yeah, I want to love Jesus more. And, and then we're also very aware that some of those kids have had a profound interaction with God. And so kids are kids, and you got to let them be kids, and they're going to be immature, and they don't always know, and they're not signing up for a lifetime of commitment. They're sensing and feeling a prodding of God, and to see them respond is a powerful thing. What I am passionate about, though, is I watch young people, and people will say they're too young. They're too young, and I'm like, you're wrong. I just sent a girl from our church to the Naval Academy. She's 18. She made a very big decision. You start studying. If you want to be a doctor, you're going to start in high school now. If you want to be an engineer, you're 17, 18. You want to be a nurse, you're 17, 18. You want to join the military, you're 17, 18. You want to go into the trades, you're 17, 18. So I'm like, that's a false narrative to say, I want to be in ministry, or I want to start to focus my career. And I'm like, the sooner you think about that. Now, that doesn't mean that I felt called to be a pastor when I was 17, and then I realized that this calling would play out differently when I'm 25. That's great. That's no big deal at all. In fact, that's a good thing. But to consider the Lord in the beginning of those formulaic stages of your life are just huge. So I just take a lot of joy in that. I also find that it's the youth conference is very encouraging to youth workers and youth pastors. Like, we work hard to celebrate them. The conference is for their ministry. It's not for our ministry. So again, we don't draw kids to ourselves. We're trying to, push them back to their youth leader, and watching all of that play out and being a trusted friend, an ally in all of that is some of the richest stuff for me.
I agree, Jeff. I mean, exclamation mark, ditto to all that. The part that you just said, like helping students own and understand their faith, and that the same Holy Spirit who lives inside of them, that, by the way, raised Christ from the dead, that lives inside of us as pastors and parents, like, there's no reason that God can't use them in the context and in what I'm like, it doesn't matter, like, if where they go, the circumstances surrounding them, God has a purpose and a plan for their life, and it starts now, and he can use them now. And so for us to get to like help fan those flames, I love being able to be a part of that. So
it's awesome.
All right, Jeff. Well, season 3, we're doing something a little unique. We're going to start asking a bunch of our guests on the podcast some rapid fire questions to wrap up our time. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
We're going to get a little peek under the Jeff Bogue brain.
Okay.
He doesn't.
He's going to be very disappointing, everybody.
As long as you play along, we'll be fine. But we've done things like this before. We did the Hot Ones challenge, and Jeff didn't eat any hot wings.
Well, that's a sign into Jeff Bogue's brain. Like, I will be the antagonist and all that.
We'll go easy on you. All right. We'll pull these in with different guests, and we'll do this throughout the year. It'll be fun. So, Jeff, first one, kind of rapid fire. We'll start easy. What would you say is your biggest ministry win?
Watching the next generation win. So watching young men and women who have grown up in our church actually adopt the faith and then adopt the mission and the vision of the church, but do it in their way and make it make sense to their generation. So it is way more fun to watch your quote unquote kid hit a home run than it is to hit one yourself. So those are big wins. I love it. The other piece of that is anything that involves people not going to hell. So adults, young adults, teenagers, children, knowing Christ and the power of that. My big wins.
Nice. All right. Going to go the opposite direction.
Okay.
Biggest ministry pet peeve.
Biggest ministry pet peeve. When minor things become major time suckers and noise. So debating nuances of theology drives me insane. Arguing over church philosophy drives me insane. People or ministries being territorial drives me insane. And then honestly, sin drives me insane. The amount of time and energy and distraction that walking people through sin takes. Now, I'm a pastor, I love them, but it also drives me insane.
For sure. That's very good. All right, so I figured you were going to go that direction with both of those questions, so that was fun. Well done. Now I'm going to throw you a curveball.
Okay. Lifetime
supply of anything.
Anything?
Anything. What would it be?
Like food or
anything. Lifetime supply of anything you would want. What would it be?
That's a really good question. Probably money to invest in my family with. So think vacations, fun times.
There you go.
Sending them on mission trips, that kind of stuff. I am never happier than when I'm surrounded by my family. So maybe, I don't know if money's the right answer, but whatever that is, that I could never think twice about saying yes to my family.
That's good. That's really good. All right. Favorite season and why?
Fall, because it's beautiful. And it's, I love the food. I love the weather. We live in Ohio, so we get to see the leaves change.
Yeah.
I love football season. I love Ohio State football in particular. I love everything about the fall.
Very fun. All right. First concert you ever went to?
Probably, that's a really good question. Probably Petra.
Nice.
If you remember them back in the day.
Wow. I do remember them. All right. If you have to get a chicken sandwich from a fast food restaurant, where are you going?
Chick-fil-A.
Chick-fil-A?
Hands down.
All right. Best book you've read lately?
The Bible, Eric.
Best other book you've read lately?
I actually read a lot. When I say read, I also you have to let me do listen to.
Oh, sure.
So I listened to the Oppenheimer story. I read that.
Fun.
And then I read a fiction one. I actually got it off of a podcast. I'll have to, let me see if I can quick look it up for you guys.
Nice. I know you're a history nerd. You like all the
I love
stuff.
history.
Yeah.
Like I'm reading right now one called Midnight in Chernobyl. It's about the Chernobyl right down. The Project Hail Mary. It was called. Andy Weir. It's one of the first fiction movies that are fiction books I've read in a long, long time. And I heard somebody mention it on a podcast. I thought it was interesting. It was really good.
Fun.
So if you listen to that, you'll hear the nerdy side of.
Those are things that I would listen to in lieu of taking melatonin. So.
Yeah.
All right. Favorite movie of all time?
Boy, that's a hard one because we love movies. It would be a tie between Inception and probably Endgame, the Marvel movie. I love the Marvel movies.
Nice. Fun. All right. This year at Youth Conference, you talked about what's your God dream. You touched on that a minute ago. What would be your God dream?
It would be two parts. So everything for me starts with my family. So I love the it's not my quote, it's somebody else's, but my God dream would be to be loved and respected the most by the people who know me the most, the most deeply. So anything with my family is unbelievably valuable to me. Ministry-wise, to start 30 churches in 30 years through Grace Church, and with Momentum, 3,000 pastors, 10,000 missional marketplace leaders. It's what I give. Those three things is what I give my life to under the umbrella of loving and serving Jesus.
Okay. All right, last one. What's your go-to recommended resource for equipping pastors?
I think the best thing out there right now is Newhoff, the Karen Newhoff, the breadth of guests he has on. It's an easy listen. He mixes it up well. He'll have the 25-year-old cutting edge guy and the 70-year-old John Maxwell on, and so I listen to him pretty regularly right now. And then what I like about Kerry is he actually opens you up to other resources. So he'll bring this guy on, and then I'll get interested in that guy and kind of go from there.
That's true. Good. Jeff, thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for playing my game. On next week's episode, we'll talk about, do angels have wings? And we'll dive deep into the theology.
I cannot wait. The answer is yes, and I can't wait to do that episode.
Oh, man. We really do appreciate you listeners joining us. Again, if you have questions, please DM us on Instagram. If you have our phone numbers, call us, text us. If you email info@buildmomentum.org. We would love to be a resource to you.
If you're in a bind, I'm serious. If you're in a bind, call immediately. We
absolutely.
Our great joy is serving you.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're here to know you, to pray for you, to encourage you. Anything short of sin that we can do, we'll do it. So, we appreciate you tuning in for season 3. It's going to be super fun. We have some fun guests along the way. We did some of our episodes even at Momentum Youth Conference and recorded some with some of our speakers. If you haven't checked out those sessions yet, you can still see those on our YouTube page. It's YouTube /Momentum Ministry Partners is our podcast or our channel name. And you can see all those sessions still, and we'll have the speaker clips up here shortly. So thanks so much for tuning in. We're excited about season 3.
Thank you for joining us for this episode. We hope you found it to be valuable. And if you did, would you share it with someone else in your network who might enjoy it? Also, would you please go on and subscribe, rate, and review it? That way you don't miss any more, and somebody else will be able to find it too. Also, because we want to be your trusted resource, if you have a question or topic that you would like us to discuss on an upcoming episode, send that to us via email to info@buildmomentum.org, or you can send us a DM on any of our social media platforms. You can find us there at Momentum Ministry Partners. Also, if you need more information on our ministry, be sure to check out our website at buildmomentum.org. Thank you so much, and we hope to see you next time.